Welcome to the NWI.com Political Roundtable for Friday, October 28th. I'm Robert Blaszkiewicz, Assistant Managing Editor of The Times. Here with me today, Doug Ross, Editorial Page Editor of The Times. Mark Kiesling's not with us, working on some important things for Sunday's paper, so hopefully he'll be back with us next week. Wanted to start off talking about elections. We're going to jump ahead first to 2012. We saw this week an interesting development in the county commissioner's race with former Sheriff Roy Dominguez, a Democrat looking to challenge Jerry Shubh.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, I think, because Dominguez is, the police department under Dominguez's tenure is under investigations. We've, seen some of the officers plead guilty on federal charges. That was the whole machine gun thing and all of that. And apparently that's kind of a continuing investigation. So we'll see what happens with that. So that's got to hurt Dominguez, I would think.
Yeah.
And then Shubh is also probably the strongest promoter of the trash to ethanol plant, which pretty well crashed and burned and went nowhere. And so I got to imagine that's going to hurt him as well. So, you got two people limping going into the race.
Should be interesting.
So it should be.
Yeah, jumping back into this year's election, I think it's safe to say that the hottest mayoral race in the region is the Portage mayoral race between incumbent Democrat Olga Blaszkiewicz and Republican challenger Jim Snyder, who this is a rematch from 4 years ago when Snyder lost by just about a little over 300 votes.
Well, he jumped into that late, though, because the candidate who was running, Dave Highlands, died. Yeah. And so, Jim really didn't have time to mount much of a campaign.
Right.
So that's what makes this, all the more interesting.
Right. And what we've seen this week is some complaints come out about donations, namely golf outing donations made to the Velasquez mayoral campaign from both the Portage High School Athletic Department and PEDCO, Portage Economic Development Corporation.
Right, and that's, neither one of those should have given the money.
Poor judgment,
right.
Not necessarily the mayor's fault, but...
Right. But, she could have and should have jumped on it right away and said, look, this was a mistake, and, I'm giving back the money, and resolved it very quickly instead of letting it play out over several days.
Right. And then the other issue coming out this week is the cancellation of a redevelopment commission meeting where they were going to discuss one of the controversies that has been brought up by Snyder.
Right.
Snyder's really been pushing this is his complaints over, first of all, his complaints over the the University Center downtown on Central Avenue, and
the University Center is where a number of area colleges are going to offer, in the future, some classes.
Correct. So and his complaint is that there are no formal leases, but you're not necessarily going to have formal leases, and there seem to be the local university leaders are involved in this project, and I don't think that's
absolutely. There's no
I think that kind of thing's unfounded. But the other complaint is about this mailing that went out, kind of a flyer about promoting the University Center, and the mayor said that it was done to students are thinking about enrollment around this time, and wanted to get the word out about the University Center. But
the timing is suspect.
The timing, obviously, in the heat of a campaign, everything is viewed through a political lens.
Right.
Is this going to damage? We already expected this to be a tight race. It seems like there might be some damage here to the mayor's chances for re-election.
Well, I think so. The Howey political report that came out this week lists that race as a toss-up, and frankly, I see it that way too. Yeah. Portage is a very heavily Democratic city, very union-oriented, and so that would, conventional wisdom, give that to Olga as the Democrat. And frankly, as the incumbent, she gets an edge anyway, just for name recognition. Yeah. Snyder, has bucked, or at least in discussions with us, bucked the kind of anti-union Republican label that Indiana Republicans have gotten recently.
Sure.
And so, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how that race is going to turn.
It's going to be, I think it's going to be down to the wire.
It's going to be a late night one.
It is going to be a late night one. Moving on, we had this morning, we're talking to you on a Friday afternoon, and this morning we had members of the Regional Bus Administration officials come in and talk to us about the financial plight that they're currently in and kind of being on life support, as they put it. Doug?
Well, they are. I mean, they've got enough money to last through June, basically, of next year. But behind that, you have to realize that their funding plug is actually being pulled at the end of this year.
Yes.
So they're just spending their reserves basically to kind of keep going while meanwhile there's no solution in sight. They've still got that dust up with Gary Public Transportation.
Mm-hmm.
GPTC is the bus provider in Gary. They got the dust up with them. They talked about a memorandum of understanding, way back before the primary to try to come up with a kind of a regional funding solution, consolidation, all that. Never happened.
Yeah.
They're cutting back services. We're hearing stories about people who have to ride for hours just to get to work.
Right,
I
right.
mean,
There's a couple arguments in favor of regional consolidation of the
Right.
bus services. One is of course rider services, that you could coordinate those routes so that people can much easily get from place to place if they have a longer way to go, if they have to go from one city to another.
right.
The other is administrative efficiencies. You have these separate, the RBA, you have Chicago, you have Gary, so you have all these separate administrative, offices for these bus services. You can consolidate.
And those are
that.
employees who aren't behind the wheel.
Right, right.
That's the problem.
Right, but certainly the RBA officials said they have been in talks with Chicago, but Gary, basically no communication at all.
Well, GPTC has its own plan. I haven't seen it yet. I've got to talk to them about it. But they've got their own plan for this bus apocalypse or
Right.
whatever.
Well, I mean, because they're
You
facing financial,
right. I
problems
mean,
of
they've
their own.
defaulted on different things before,
Right.
so
Right.
they're in serious trouble as well.
Yeah.
So, really, it's going to take a legislative solution, either at the county level or at the state level, and neither one looks
Yeah.
likely at this
Well,
point.
yeah. Someone needs to show some leadership, I think.
Yeah.
At the county or the state level. on
Nobody
this.
wants to talk new taxes, but
Because it's all to the detriment of those riders that really desperately need the
Right.
services. Another visit that we had earlier this week on Wednesday? Yeah,
Yes.
Wednesday. U.S. Senator Dan Coates, the junior Republican senator, was here to talk to us on a lot of issues. And of course, the dominant issue that took up a lot of our conversation was the economy, was jobs. Doug, your assessment of what the senator had to say?
I mean, he was making the point that, not the problem with the economy, because there are, hundreds of problems with the economy, if not more.
Yeah.
But, what is central to all of this is the uncertainty that, the business owners don't know what's going to happen with their taxes. They don't know what's going to happen with health care. They don't know what's going to happen with, their employees, any number of things.
Yeah.
All kinds of regulations.
I hear this talking point a lot from Republicans, and it kind of just strikes me as a red herring, because when is there certainty? There's elections every 2 years. The Congress has to create a budget, has to have a budget every year. When is there certainty?
Well, I mean, this debt crisis is kind of a manufactured crisis, probably.
Right.
But in any case, there could be more. November 23rd is going to be, either we have something to be thankful for at Thanksgiving, or the uncertainty is magnified because the super committee breaks down.
But he really failed to mention, I think, the driving force in all this is the lack of demand. The people out of work are not able to consume goods and services the way people that are employed can do that, and so lack of demand is, I think, is a big factor in why businesses aren't hiring.
Well, and what they're doing is they're using technology to reach to be more productive.
That as well.
And that's putting people out of work. Coates made the very good point, I thought, that when you take a look at the steel mills, for instance, you don't have guys that are out there with their shirt sleeves rolled up and all that.
Right.
They're in a control room.
Right. They're producing as much steel as they ever have with a lot fewer people than they did back, say, in the 70s.
Right. And more highly educated.
Yeah.
So they're going deeper into debt to get the job, and so that's creating the student loan problem. So it's a mess.
Yeah, student
It's a real
loans. I
mess.
mean, that's a whole other mess because tuition prices have just skyrocketed. So the other thing that I was interested by, I asked him specifically about the Obama jobs plan, which has been opposed by the Republicans, and I pointed to now that they're breaking it up into these individual pieces, and the most recent piece they voted on was money for teachers and first responders, police and firefighters. That would be additional money that would go to the states for those personnel. To employ those people, and then the money would be paid for by a small surtax on millionaires, basically.
Right.
Coates, he did say that he would support some components in Obama's jobs bill. He didn't support that, and the reason he said that he didn't support it was because it would reward states that were not wise with their money, that behaved badly. He pointed to Illinois as an example of
the
a
state right behind us.
Yeah, of a state that has not been responsible with its budget, as opposed to states like Indiana, which has been, which he hailed, Rich Daniels and the job he did. And this kind of struck me, thinking about it later. It's kind of like a teacher punishing the entire class because a few students cheated. So it kind of struck me as kind of a weak argument when those we could use teachers, we could use police officers, we could use first responders, and those people would, if they're employed, they would fuel demand. Their money would come back into the economy, and it seems to me that his reasoning for not supporting it is a little bit weak.
Well, yes. I mean, he's right that there needs to be pension reform in some of these, states, Illinois, California, for instance.
But that's a separate issue, really. From
yeah. Well, I mean, his point is, and I think this is valid. If they could use. If they could force pension reform out of those states before they got the money, then they're not compounding those states' financial problems by giving a lot of money to hire people who will go into a pension system that's already failing.
Sure.
Sure. But don't hurt Indiana in the process by giving the money from us.
Exactly. Right. Right. So yeah, and you could tie this to pension. Hey, if you were creative, you could tie this to pension reform and say, hey, if you hire these people with limited pensions, and there you go.
Now, Coates' point is, they want to do things, like this. Maybe nobody has tried to offer an amendment on that, but that
he was very critical of Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Leader, that he's not allowing Republicans to offer amendments to bills. And this is why you see the Republican obstructionism with the filibuster, because they're not able to offer amendments.
Right.
So, and he did acknowledge that Congress is pretty unpopular because they can't.
9%, I think, was the last. And I don't know that there are that many people in Congress to account for the 9%.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I wonder who the 9% are. Who are these people that approve of Congress? I have not run it. I have yet to encounter one.
I haven't either.
Okay.
Well, even Coates was pretty critical, so there you go.
Yeah, I don't think Coates approves of himself. Anyway, that's all the time we have for this week. Have a happy Halloween, and we'll be back next week talking a lot about the elections, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Next week as we come down to the wire here on the November 8th election. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week on another Political Roundtable.